Hi, Mike Coplitz here with you. Welcome to session number 5 of the epreaching class. I would be willing to bet that most of you have heard the statement that you should say things 3 times you expect people to remember them. I remember attending an American Management Association class way back in the 1980s, and we were talking about getting points across in presentations. And the instructor said that you need to say things 3 times for people to remember them and to comprehend them properly. And I always wondered what that meant. And the instructor at that time never elaborated on what the 3 times were. Am I just supposed to repeat the same thing 3 times and hope that the person or persons I'm talking to get it? Well, several years ago, a lot of years ago now, think about it, I came into contact with something called neuro-linguistic programming. And I did some studies on neurolinguistics, and I found that the 3 times rule really comes from neurolinguistics. Now, there are 3 ways that we learn. Now, this is using our senses to some degree. They are visual learning, auditory learning, and kinesthetic learning. Visual learning are people who need to see to understand. Simple enough. Auditory people need to hear in order to learn, and kinesthetic people go by feelings. They must feel it. That one I'll have to explain a little bit further in a second. You also process information after you bring it in. So you're bringing in the information, so I should say visually, auditorily, or kinesthetically. Then you internally process the information, and then you'll spit the information out, if you will. And for 99% of the population, if you're a visual learner, you will pass along information visually, auditorily, or kinesthetically. With the rise in computer programs and games, we're probably teaching a lot of kids to be visual learners, even though they may not be. Now, let me tell you, there are ways to tell whether someone is a visual and auditory or a kinesthetic learner. About 45% of the population are visual learners. 45% are auditory learners, and that leaves about 10% for kinesthetics. Not going too deep into it, you can actually tell when you're talking to someone by the movement of their eyes. There's my eyes now, you can see them. By the movement of the eyes, whether someone is a visual learner, a kinesthetic learner, or an auditory learner. Basically, visual learners tend to look up. As they're listening to you, they're thinking and they're bringing you information in. They tend to look up, and they may actually look away to the left or the right, but the key is they're looking up. You might think that they're not looking at you and ignoring you, but actually they are hearing you, but they're visualizing what you're saying. People like this also love charts, graphs, anything visual to convey information. Now, an auditory learner, you can tell who they are. Oops, didn't make the transition there. Auditory learner, their eyes will look on a straight line, if you will, to the left or to the right. They're looking toward their ears. That means that they are processing what you're saying and the words that you're saying, and they're analyzing and they're thinking about whatever it is you're talking about by what they hear. Now, kinesthetic people, on the other hand, they'll look down. Their eyes will go down. And now you know you are dealing with a kinesthetic. Meaning they're hearing your words and thinking about how it makes them feel. That's probably the best way to describe it. They're not... Well, let me stop there and let it go there for a second. Best way to say it. They're Those who aren't attuned to NLP, which of course is most of the population, will tend to see the eye movement and think it means something else. I just did it there. I looked up for a second because I happen to be a visual learner. How else can I tell if you're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? Is I listen to how you say things. A visual learner will say, "Oh, I see your point." This is simplistic, by the way, bear that in mind. An auditory person will say, "I hear what you're saying." A kinesthetic person might say, "This is how I feel when you say this." Then that does not mean that a visual person might not use auditory language. Or a kinesthetic person might not say, "I see." You're looking for general trends. You're looking for general trends. Now, here's the fun part. Say it 3 times. So the first time you make your point, you make it visually. Visually in a sermon, hey, could be a graphic, could be a picture, could be the fact that you have an outline up on a screen. That's visually. You can tell them, "I see this, I see that." You can use that kind of language. Then you say it a second time, and now you talk about hearing. Maybe you have some music playing, maybe you have some sound playing, or you're simply using the words. So-and-so heard such and such, instead of so-and-so saw such and such. You use hearing language. So you're going to use seeing visual language, now you're going to use auditory, hearing language. And then for the kinesthetic, you're going to say, "This is how it makes me feel when I think of these words that Jesus said." So you could say, again, an example. It's hard to come up with examples right off the cuff, but if you're looking at words of Jesus, you can say, "I see such and such when Jesus said such and such. I heard this, whatever, from Jesus. And when Jesus said blah, 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 made me feel nice and warm and kind of cozy inside." It works. Believe it or not, it does work. So inside of your composition style sermon, and you have point 1, 2, 3, and 4, if you can say things visually, auditorily, kinesthetically, you're going to capture everyone. That's how you keep everyone on board with your sermon. Now in the worksheet you might want to take a look at, I'm going to ask you to go look out on the internet and go find some information about these kinds of learning, and to take a look at a passage. I'm going to give you a passage and ask you to write down how you would talk about it in each of these different ways. Okay, that's session number 5. I will see you in session number 6. God bless.